سر عند الله بينك أنت وبين الله هل لك صدقات تخفى لا يعلمها إلا الله.
Salam and Jambo. Welcome to the Baraza Banter podcast. Grab a cup of tea and maybe even some mandazi. Join us on our journey as we change the world one sip at a time. We're back, guys, for another episode. And I think after that big sabbatical, we should definitely address our previous episode, the veganism and Islam one, because a lot of people were a bit afraid that we had
Concerned,
lost
I'd say.
our relationship because of the first part. So Zoha, we're still friends, right? Just making sure.
I mean, yeah, we could say so. No, I'm kidding.
It was mainly to just show or emphasize the two very extreme sides on veganism and Islam, and it was just a skit. We just wanted to show you the two extremes.
And I'd say it's also a good representation of how at times in life we do have two extremes. You know, like whenever there's an argument or a discussion happening, we should always go into it, or a debate, we should always go into it with an open mindset to go into it with the intention to learn something rather than to be arguing about the point. So yeah,
Right.
we still are friends.
Yeah, right. And maybe if you watched the full episode, you would have known that. For this episode, we are going to be discussing what we learned this month, some Ramadan reflections, and then a fun segment on our favorite snacks during Ramadan. And lastly, we will also be sharing some reflections on Dua Iftitah because it's one of the main duas this month. So I hope you will join us for the whole episode. So let's get started. What did we learn this month, Zahra?
Okay, so this is actually not part of like a majlis or something, but I was having a conversation with a non-Muslim friend at the beginning of the month, and she was asking why the timings of our prayer are so specific and why we have certain rules in Ramadan and all this type of stuff. And she was saying that like we have no rules. She's Christian. She was saying like we have no rules. Sometimes I don't pray, sometimes I pray, and it really doesn't matter. And so I was thinking, like, I did not have a direct response at that moment, but I realized that prayer is similar to fasting in the way that the physical part of our body impacts the spiritual part. So we abstain from physical sin and from food and water, and this teaches our mind and soul self-discipline. It teaches us patience, gratitude, God consciousness. In the same way, the acts of prayer may be like physical and repetitive. We might find it too repetitive sometimes, but it teaches us humility and self-discipline and remembrance of Allah throughout the day. And also, if you're praying Jummah, like it's so recommended to pray Jummah or even Jamaat namaz, and it teaches us the love of our community and to stay connected. And I found that really special.
I think to build upon that, I'd say it's a beautiful connection, because the point that I was about to mention connects very well to your point of the body and the soul. And from my reflections, so what I tried to do this Maha Ramadan is during the Quran recitation, I tried to maybe emphasize on one specific theme every day of the month. So I'd catch, like, let's say as an example, the theme of the body versus the soul, or the theme of submission, or the theme of ibadah and what is true ibadah. So one of the ayahs that really fascinated me was the ayah from Surah Yunus, ayah number 92, which says, فَالْيَوْمَ نُنَجِّيكَ بِبَدَنِكَ لِتَكُونَ لِمَنْ خَلْفَكَ آيَةً وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ النَّاسِ عَنْ آيَاتِنَا لَغَافِلُونَ. And it talks about Fir'aun, how Allah addresses Fir'aun saying that, and today we will save you with your body, i.e. your physical body, so that you become for whoever is before you a sign. And indeed, many of the people are ghafil, are not fully aware or of our signs. And it's beautiful how Allah distinguishes, and we can clearly see the difference between how Fir'aun was begging for forgiveness and for salvation, because he could see death in front of him. And that is why he was, that's how the curtains of falsehood were lifted from his eyes, right? And he could finally see the truth. And he was begging for the salvation of his soul. But Allah said that we obviously can't do that now, because now it's a fake one, right? You can see it. That's why you're submitting. But one thing that we will save is your body, so that you become a lesson for the people to come after you. So it shows how the salvation of the soul is the true salvation, number one. And number two, that although that it obviously highlights the presence and the importance of both these elements that we're sent with in this world, right? That this is all we're sent with, a body and a soul. So as much as it is important for us to focus and to think about the importance of our body, it's also important for us to think about, okay, if let's say if I'm making a schedule of I need to do this much exercise today, I need to make sure that I sleep early today, so that my sort of cycle is proper, I don't get dark circles and stuff. We need to also make sure, okay, what have I done for my soul today? Have I watered it enough? And I feel like as much as we allow that soul to become more like Allah, it will attract and it will get attracted more towards Him, and that will allow it to elevate, because obviously once you get attracted to someone more and more, you start going towards that person more and more, right? So the more our soul becomes like Allah, the more it will become attracted to Allah, and the more it'll elevate to Allah.
That's amazing. I think both those reflections are beautiful in their own way. So just to add on to that, something that I've been focusing on this Ramadan is just a few practical things that I've been listening to from Sheikh Jafar's lectures. If you don't know, he's the main lecturer at Masumin Islamic Center, and he's very practical. So the last few nights he's been talking about the importance of Salatul Layl, and he mentioned I think 24 benefits of reciting Suratul Layl, and he said that if you knew how beneficial it was, you would not miss it, right? Like imagine he used this example, and he was like, imagine if I offered you $1 million, we're waking up the next day, would you do it? Like really early, like let's say at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Would you wake up at 4 a.m. if you
Yeah.
knew you were getting $1 million every day? I mean, of course, right? Who wouldn't? But just in terms of because I guess our brains are so attuned to instant gratification, we sort of put the benefits that we know and we've heard for so long on the side, right? Because we're not instantly getting it. We have to work towards it. But that's the whole beauty of Islam. It's like persistence is key.
That's actually such a beautiful point that you mentioned, because quite coincidentally, I was just listening to Sheikh Panahian's lecture yesterday, and he mentioned a story about Imam Ali. He says that one of the companions noticed that Imam Ali got up, there was a gathering of people, and he got up and he started walking towards a place in a hurry. So he followed him and he asked him, "Oh Imam, where are you going?" So the Imam says, "Da'ni," which means leave me alone. And when the companion inquired more and said, "No, I do want to know, where are you going in such a hurry?" And so the Imam basically said that I'm going to have that private time, to have that khalwa with my Lord. And I think instead of thinking of Salat al-Layl as, okay, fine, it's just these 2 rakats of namaz I need to get over with, and okay, this will get me closer to Allah. And yeah, it will get you closer to Allah, and it will, inshallah, with consistency, raise your darajat in the hereafter. But that is an outlook of a tradesman, as the hadith says, right? That we don't want to worship Allah as tradesmen. Okay, if we're doing this one thing, in return, I'm going to get these many thawab. But in fact, we should be so deep in love with Him that, even if we are awake at that time of the night, we're like, there's something missing. I have to go talk to Him. I haven't spoken to Him the whole day. I miss Him. And that sort of urge, that sort of craving should be in our heart that automatically pulls us towards Salat al-Layl, instead of us being like, oh, okay, let me just quickly pray it before going to sleep, which is a great thing on its own as well, and which is obviously I'd say the step that we all start with. But I think one of the aims that we could keep in our mind is that if we develop that love of Allah, then automatically we'll be drawn towards wanting to speak to him in Salat al-Layl.
Right.
Honestly, you're so right. I learned something from Sayyid Asad Jafri's Majlis, where he was saying that it's all about our mindset, right? Like we have to think about prayer in a way that like I don't have to worship Allah, I get to worship Allah, and it's something that we should be grateful for. And he was saying that our worship needs to be permanently ingrained in our heart, and that love needs to be permanently ingrained in our heart so that it travels with us to the hereafter and it stays with us.
That reminds me of what Sheikh Jafar was saying, in addition to my point, was that we should find one thing to do in private, just for Allah. Like nobody should know. So start with one thing and then move on. Like let's say that one thing is Salatul Layl. Okay, you start it and then you keep doing acts that are just for Allah, like nobody else knows, and it's just private between you and Allah. And then slowly, all of our actions will become just for Allah, because it's about changing that niyat, right? And that also chimes in with what Sayyid Asad Jafi was talking about, the ego, right? Like when we do something, it's like we have this feeling like we need to tell someone that we've done this thing,
Yeah.
right? And
I think
that's
Zahra, that beautifully brings us to the point of like the story that you had posted a few days ago. مشعل الفاصل recitation. هل لك سر عند الله بينك أنت وبين الله. Yes, which basically means, do you have a secret with Allah that's something that's just basically between you and Him? Like a علاقة of mahabba, basically, a connection of love instead of a connection of a tradesman.
Yeah, exactly.
هل لك سر عند الله بينك أنت وبين الله هل لك صدقات تخفى لا يعلمها إلا الله.
That brings us to our segment, and this is quite a fun question. What is your favorite snack in Ramadan? Shall we start with, who wants to go first?
Me.
Okay, go ahead, Zahra. I think she has a really good one.
I've got a unique one. If you know, you know. But like after Amal nights, stop by Karachi Darbar, or even we used to get this at mosque, honestly. But stop by Karachi Darbar and get aloo paratha. It hits different to it.
Whoa, that's some elite stuff, man. Like I was about to say something on the lines of, I don't know, like a Galaxy chocolate or I don't know, salad chips from Shanaz into your shop, but like, wow.
Now I miss aloo parathas in Dubai.
I don't think it was a good idea saying this and recording this while we were fasting, because now, aloo paratha.
Yeah, now my mouth is watering.
Okay, I'd say my favorite snack would be either something quick from Shanaz into your shop, or the quick mandazi and chai after mosque.
The other day we had like mandazi and barazi.
What a
So that was really good. After the amals, that was a nice refresher to wake up again.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're
I
talking
remember
about
there
like
was
your
this one
five
time
snacks,
that someone full on brought like a whole basket of snacks to mosque. Like she walked
we
in
would
with
always bring it
an
in our
actual picnic basket for the Amal nights. And
I remember, and people would bring like boxes of things and then just pass them around, like desserts and
yeah, God bless them.
cookies and
But when
cake.
that person walked in with a basket, I was like, okay, I know where to sit tonight for my Amal night.
Yeah, but you know that's a good thing. Like we had iftar first, and then the du'as and majlis, so you can like snack throughout du'as and majlis.
That's
side of the
exactly why
world,
you
we're
came
sort
to
of
Duas
just
and Majlis, right?
yeah, but then we're over here. We're just sort of like sleeping through du'as and majlis because we can't focus. We don't have any food in our tummy yet. Now that we are at our last part in our podcast, the reflections on Dua Iftitah, I just wanted to take a minute before we share reflections to explain to you why we just decided to choose Dua Iftitah this month. There are so many duas we recite in the month of Ramadan, so why Dua Iftitah? So as a group, I think we decided to do this dua because it's something that we recite every single night. It's the longest dua that we recite every night. And I feel like when you do something so routinely, it's easy for it to become something that we just do or recite like parrots, right? We're not really looking into the meaning. It's sort of there like, okay, this is a checklist of du'as we need to recite. Check, 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 done, sort of thing. But dua iftitah is such a beautiful dua if we just ponder on its words a little more and try and apply the lessons that we learn from the dua in our life. So this month we decided that we would think about dua iftitah a little more in depth and sort of apply it into our own lives, and then share those reflections of something that really stuck with us in dua iftitah.
So if we look at the name of the dua itself, the opening, right? Dua al-iftitah. It so beautifully connects to the start of the dua, which is obviously a praise, a thana of Allah, right? As it says, Allahumma inni aftatihu thana'a bihamdik. Oh Allah, I open the thana, your praise with your hamd, with your shukr and thankfulness. And it shows us how the opening of locked doors in our life is through the hamd and the shukr of Allah. So this is a beautiful concept that can be related to opening, because we might just see it as, okay, the opening, all right, the opening dua of, Shahr Ramadan that we read every month, every year. But what is it opening? What is it opening? The locked doors of our souls? Is it opening locked doors that we have in our life? Any problems that we might be facing? And dua very beautifully not only starts with the thana of Allah and the hamd and His shukr, but it highlights how not only us and the living beings like us humans praise and worship Him, but it's all of creation that have a unified praise towards Him, that that all together harmoniously praise the Almighty. And Sheikh Azar Nasser very beautifully puts it. He says that all of creation worships Allah, and if we are the ones that don't, and if we are the ones that don't do His hamd and His thana and His praise, then we are simply the anomalies in creation, right? And Sheikh Muhammad Shumali very beautifully puts it in his description of Dua Iftitah as well. He says, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ حَلِيمًا غَفُورًا. This is verse 44 of chapter 17. And he says that indeed there's not a thing but it celebrates His praise, but you don't understand their glorification. So when we go to the park, or when we are surrounded with nature, it's like we are part of a wave that is doing tasbih of Allah, that's doing thana of Allah, and everything around us is praising Him. Everything around us has ayat of Allah and is a sign of His. Not only the Quran has these ayat and signs, but wherever we look, even the non-living things, because the non-living things are all inspired and they're all made by someone who was inspired by God, right? So it all goes back to Him, and it's beautiful how we're surrounded by so many of His ayat. If only إِذَا هُمْ يَفْقَهُونَ, if only we think and ponder upon these. So it's beautiful how Dua Iftitah is not only a dua that is annually recited, but it is an opening. Indeed, it's the opening of eyes, the opening of locked doors in our hearts, which all starts with us thanking Him for what we have. Ya Allah, thank You for giving me air to breathe. Ya Allah, thank You for giving me eyes, for giving me eyelashes to protect my eyes, for giving me a layer of tears that protects the inside of my eye. Ya Allah, thank You for giving me skin, in a different kind of skin on my palms and a different kind of skin on top of my hand. Ya Allah, thank You for giving me feet that walk. Ya Allah, thank You for giving me the coordination between my feet, where my right foot goes in front, my left foot automatically knows to go in front. Ya Allah, thank You for giving me the ability to run, to walk on myself, to be independent. And thus, we will then reduce focusing on things that we don't have. And this is what shukr teaches us, which is what Dua Iftitah teaches us.
So for my reflection, I decided to look at it from the perspective that Ramadan, and especially its Laylatul Qadr nights, are all about setting the course for the next year. Like making a habit of doing things so that when it comes to an end, we can keep it going. The spirit of Ramadan should really last the whole year through the actions that we do. So if there's anything that you've really been wanting to do, Ramadan is the time to start it and then follow through with it in the whole year. And I think dua iftitah is one way that it just sets the course so beautifully. And one way it does that is through the praising of Allah. And it's for the smallest things. And I think if we apply that in our lives, we can think about it in the sense that it's just the small things that happen. Like, for example, you go outside and the weather is beautiful. Subhanallah, the weather is so beautiful. Praise Allah for that. Remembering Allah in the smallest things, that really helps us to connect to Him, because it reminds us that we really don't have control over anything. It's Allah that has control over everything. And if we choose to remember Him in those small little things, it will increase our connection and our certainty and our faith, right? So I've just been trying to do that through this whole month. And I remember Zoha had sent me a picture of the tree outside her house, and it was like there was a heart shape in the middle, like the branches were sort of making a heart shape. And she was like, and she remembered Allah through that, like how beautiful Allah's creation is. And Zahra, another thing that Zahra does as well is that she'll post on her Instagram, on her private Instagram, casual magic of the day. And that's something so, it's like the small things, just noticing the small things and praising Allah for every single thing that He has created or He has given us. Like, we take so many things for granted. If we were to praise Allah for everything that He's given to us, we would not be able to do so, because there's just too many blessings that He has given us, right? So just taking out the time and really remembering Allah every step through the day, that is something that I've been trying to do. And another thing that Dua Iftitah does really well, which we should be applying throughout the year, is praying for Imam Mahdi throughout the year, making that connection with our Imam. So when we make that connection to our Imam, we're really in Ramadan. It reminds us that every day when we wake up, we should take some time and pray for our Imam. Pray for his safety. Pray that he is doing well. Pray that when he comes, he is successful. And just say salam to him every morning, because that will also really improve our connection or make us closer to the Imam of our time. And I think it's very easy because we forget that sometimes we forget, like even me, like whatever I'm saying in this reflection, I'm thinking about it first as well. So I'm not targeting it at you, but I'm also thinking about it myself, right? It's easy to, sometimes we forget, like our Imam is actually living, because we can't see him. We sometimes forget that he is there. He is somewhere here on this earth, and he's listening to us. So that's another thing that the Dua Iftitah does really well, to just remind us to keep doing that through the year. And it also opens our hearts and minds. Like Dua Iftitah, the word Iftitah means opening, right? Like, so it opens our hearts and minds. And I feel like we should keep them open throughout the coming year. Inshallah, Allah allows us to keep our hearts and minds open throughout the entire year, and gives us the tawfiq to remember Allah, praise Allah, and Imam Mahdi throughout our year, and also gives us the tawfiq to have another Ramadan next year, inshallah. Another beautiful thing I wanted to share actually was I had shared this Dua Iftitah with one of my Sunni friends, and she messaged me that day saying that this dua is so beautiful. Like, she was just so much in awe that she was speechless. She had no words because she was so in awe of the whole dua. And when I asked her, like, what did you think about it? She was like, I don't think I can ever put it into words. And isn't that so beautiful? And when she sent me that same night, when I was listening to Dua Iftitah, I was looking at it from her perspective of listening to it for the first time. Like, how would she feel listening to it? Imagine if we had never heard this dua before and we're looking at the meaning for the first time. How would we feel? And I think that really changed my mindset on Dua Iftitah, because we recite it every day. It becomes something that we are used to, and we sort of lose that magic in it. And if we if we change our perspective and look at it in the way that we have never seen it before, and I think that really makes us more grateful for the dua, and we can reap its benefits more.
So I wanted to reflect on the end of Dua Iftatah specifically because I think it has such a relevant and beautiful message for us. So the end of Dua Iftatah reads, "O Allah, we complain to you about the absence of our leader, the big numbers of enemies, the few numbers of us, widespread disorder, and vicissitudes of time against us." And I remember specifically the time when I first truly read the meaning of this part of the dua and really understood it. It was Ramadan of 2020, and there were a lot of social justice issues at the time. It was the peak of the Black Lives Matter movement, and everyone, including me, was feeling really grim about the state of the world. And reading this brought me a sense of peace, knowing that all of this is in Allah's hands, and that the Imam of our time is going to come when it is right, and he's going to bring justice amongst us, and that the truth will prevail. And even today, we see so much injustice happening around the world, and sometimes it feels like we can't even scroll through social media on a daily basis without seeing this injustice, whether it's individually in the form of like mean comments or rude, inconsiderate jokes, or it's on a government level between country to country. And this part of the dua still brings me so much peace, and I think we can connect with it so much because there's so much wrong in the world, and sometimes it's really hard to keep going on in our day knowing this. So the next part of the ending of Dua Iftatah reads, "O Allah, help us overcome all that through victory from you, that you expedite through bringing in the rule of justice and fair play, and mercy that you expand over us." And I think this part is really beautiful because it allows us just to leave everything in Allah's hands. And after we've spent so much time thinking about all this injustice, and we've tried our hardest to help people out in any way that we can, at the end of the day, we just need to have trust in Allah's plan.
This was your weekly dose of Baraza Banter.
We hope you enjoyed.
Peace.